Tinfoil fanatics, and welcome back to Tinfoil Tells. I'm your host, Brandon. Tonight we're going to be joined by my guest, Bob. Bob had a UFO sighting back in the early 2000s, and he wanted to come on here tonight and share it. Before we bring Bob on, there's a few things we need to discuss. Firstly, thanks for all the help you guys been doing. The podcast has been growing really steadily. I definitely appreciate that. Due to the growth of the podcast, I've been kicking the idea around of having more than just one episode a week. Currently looking at maybe releasing 2 episodes, Monday and Thursday, because as it is right now, I have so many things scheduled up through the winter and everything recorded. I pretty much have enough episodes to go off into the spring, and I don't like waiting around for several months to release episodes. So if you guys would enjoy having more Tinfoil Tell episodes, please let me know. You can send a message to me on any of the social medias, Facebook, Instagram. You can also leave a comment or a review. 5-star review helps out. If you'd like to have more Tinfoil Tells episode, though, please let me know. If you listen on Spotify, you can leave a message on there as well for the episode. There's a lot of different things going on with Tinfoil Tells lately. I'm definitely enjoying the ride, as they say. Recently wrote a book called Shadows of Cedarville. It's available on Amazon and other fine retailers, so make sure you check that out. If you want to continue to help the podcast, you can share it around. That is the best way to get word of mouth out there for the podcast. More eyes and ears on the podcast, the better. Helps the podcast grow, and there's more potential to find new guests to bring on here and talk about their experiences. So every time you share the podcast, you're potentially sharing with someone who wants to come on and share their experience too. Speaking of sharing their experiences, if you have one and you would like to share it, you know what to do. Just send me an email at tinfoiltellspodcast@gmail.com. We'll get you scheduled on a future episode. You can also reach out to me on Facebook or Instagram. But I think now we're going to go ahead and bring Bob on and talk about the UFO he saw. Everyone, hope you enjoy the conversation. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. I'd like to take this time to welcome my guest tonight, Bob. Thanks for coming on here and talking with me tonight.
Sure.
And a little bit about your, a little bit about yourself before we get started.
Oh, sure. I'll give you the rundown here. So I'm Bob Lamette, and I host a show called Static Radio, where we kind of tell stories each week, mostly stories about what we've been doing. And actually, that's how I kind of got here, because we're going to talk about things that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And
how long have you been doing? Yeah. How long have you been doing that?
Oh, you don't even want to ask that question, do you? No, we actually, my partner, co-host Miles and I actually started recording ourselves and putting it on the internet back in 1999.
So you've been into this little squared off niche for quite a while.
Yeah, it's been some time. We did college radio together, and when we got out of college, you go on and do other things, but we enjoyed doing that. And I said, hey, I got an idea. And we started just doing our college radio stuff on the internet, and I've been doing it ever since. So it's all kind of worked out in the end here, amazingly enough.
Yeah, I just started this a year ago. It was kind of a hobby, I guess, at this point for me. It was just kind of something I wanted to pick up and start doing. I did music stuff, and I had all this recording equipment, and I was just like, you know what? I may as well put it to use, because it's just kind of sitting around not being used. So
are you a singer, or are you just a musician?
I'll go ahead and be on the record and say neither.
Okay.
I can't play anything, and I was in a death metal band as the vocalist. So if anyone listens to death metal, you don't sing. You're more of a Cookie Monster growling screamer.
Monster. Oh.
Yeah.
So were you doing like Rammstein kind of stuff?
No, they're when you ask a metal guy like that, I'll go all genres on you. That's more industrial type metal.
Industrial, okay. Wrong area. Okay.
Yeah. No, some of the stuff that I listen to, like some of my favorites, like melodic death metal bands, and I don't know. There's really no one like mainstream that anyone could ever claim that someone would know off the top of their head unless they were kind of involved in it. But like
Five Finger Death Punch, is that one?
That's almost an insult.
I'm sorry, I don't
No,
know.
no, you're fine. When I talk to metal people, or people in general, those are the types of bands. Someone said that, oh, you play stuff like Disturb. I was like, no, if I did, I wouldn't play at all.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to
No,
figure it out.
no,
These are just ones that
no.
I know. So,
The only things that I could think of that I wouldn't be insulted if someone said, "Oh, you played stuff like Slayer." I mean, like, no, but like I'd be okay with that comparison. But
well,
it's
what's your favorite then? Tell me so I know.
my favorite band is the Black Dahlia Murder, and
Oh, okay. I'm not familiar with them, but I'm familiar with what they're
where the name's from.
right the names from
Yeah,
exactly.
they're uh they're a band out of Michigan. The Tragically, the singer of that band passed away last year, but
The-
I'm kind of regretted that they've been my favorite band for almost 20 years. I never got a chance to see them, even though they've been played around here and there. And I was like, well, I'll go the next time. Well, now never going to get that opportunity. They're still
well,
going on, but it's not the same guy, obviously, since he passed away.
well, maybe they'll do an AI version and do the like they did with Tupac, and they'll project him
Well,
onto this thing.
you're on Tinfoil Tales. We can go off and say Tupac's not really dead.
Oh, there you go. So it was
Yeah,
really him then. Okay.
yeah. No, he's just in hiding with
Is it?
Elvis.
I think Elvis might be dead by now. He's getting
Yeah,
up there.
so he's probably about 90 at this point. If
Yeah, I
he,
mean, he may not be dead, but he's probably not doing a whole lot.
yeah,
He's certainly not working at the convenience store or whatever people say that he was doing. So at
completely
this
off
point,
completely off topic, and anyone listening, I'm sorry for rambling, but I have a movie called Bubba Hotep, and
Bubba Hotep, love it. Yeah.
it's from the early 2000s, and
Mhm.
it's the guy that is supposed to be an Elvis impersonator. It's actually Bruce Campbell from the Evil Dead movies. If
Mhm.
anyone knows that reference, he plays Elvis. He's in a nursing home, and
With JFK.
yeah, no, it's is it JFK?
Yeah, he's
It's
JFK, but he's not. He's played by Ozzie Davis.
Yes, yes, yes. You do know what I'm referring to.
Oh,
That
yeah.
that
Big
is a
fan.
movie that is so randomly great that no
It
one even
is.
knows what like it is such an awesome movie because it deals with like this soul sucking mummy type thing.
We
And it's
win.
just like it's so random, but like it's just an awesome movie. So anyone listening, if you get what is the Halloween season to check out Bubba Hotep if you haven't done it. It's a hidden
Yeah.
gem.
I actually did a Bubba Hotep reference last week. I posted something. I said this was back when I was when I was dressed up as Bubba Hotep. It was an Elvis impersonator. I took a picture of many years ago,
That is
and,
awesome.
and and I said, yeah, this is rather than saying this is when I was doing Elvis, I said this is when I was Bubba Hotep. So
That's awesome.
only a few people would get that reference.
Yeah. Out of a lot of the people that I know, I've never heard anyone ever reference Bubba Hotep. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a fantastically fun movie, and
Yep.
Bruce Campbell and Ozzie Davis both do dynamite job. So
Yep.
yeah, you got to watch it. I mean, it's just something to see.
I've had it on DVD for hell, I think since probably when it first came out. So it's probably like 2004 era, 2005.
Mhm.
And I watched it a few times and thought it was great. But ever since then, I've just kind of it's been on my shelf. So I used to be a huge movie buff. So I've got like hundreds of DVDs and stuff. And it's just, they all just sit there now not being watched. And I kind of feel bad, but it's like, oh, well, it's just part of my collection, I guess.
Yeah, then whenever you get, feel like okay, I'll watch it, then you got it. So
Yeah.
yeah. As opposed to me when I don't have all that, and I go to the streaming service and I look it up, and they want to charge you $20.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't think I want to watch it that bad.
No, it's not worth paying $20 to watch it once.
That's right. It's kind of ridiculous how we've devolved a bit. Because before you'd buy the DVD for about $20, and you'd have it. You could watch it whenever. Now it's like, you get to watch it once for $20 sometimes. So
Yeah. The new Ninja Turtles movie that came out, the cartoon or whatever came out, my
Mhm.
youngest keeps asking about it. I was like, Dad doesn't want to pay $20 to watch it.
Yeah, wait till it hits the streaming services. So
Yeah, wait till it gets
HBO
streaming,
probably.
or I'll just go buy the Blu-ray for you guys.
Yeah. Because this is all ridiculous. This is the way of the world, but everybody has fallen for it apparently. So
Everyone's moved to the streaming.
yeah, it's very convenient, but um, you give up a lot. So you know,
Hmm. I'm old school. I grew up on CDs and VHS and DVDs, so it's to me,
yeah,
I'm still adjusting.
that's funny. I'm adjusting. I'm a digital adjuster.
Yeah,
That's
slowly
good.
but surely, I have to evolve, I guess, with the times.
Eventually. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say it's evolving. You're kind of getting pushed. It's much more of a forced situation, I think.
Yeah,
But the convenience is nice, but not always.
we just got rid of satellite and we're trying this whole Hulu thing. So we've had nothing but issues with internet connections, and I run on high speed fiber, but for some reason Hulu doesn't want to work correctly. So I don't understand that one. But
Have you tried the YouTube TV? It's kind of
we've
interesting.
we've looked into it's very similar to the whole Hulu thing. So I don't know if
Mhm.
we might swap out with from Hulu, but they like Disney. So
Yeah,
I have young kids, and my son
Disney
right now is
Plus.
obsessed with the cartoons on Disney Plus. So we've
Yeah,
just been sticking with Hulu since it's kind of bundled together with us. So it's a little
gotcha.
bit cheaper.
Yeah, you gotta get yeah, because they've separated everything out again. So
Yeah.
yeah, oh, well, way of the world.
Yeah. But yeah, you mentioned you had a couple of experiences or whatever.
Oh,
So if you,
sure. Actually, oddly enough, from around the time of 2005. Isn't that a great coincidence? We were just talking about that.
yeah,
Um, yeah, so I'll start with that one if you want to hear that. I can tell you I think I sent you three things, and so I can go through all of them. But the first one is a close encounter of the first kind. If you're familiar with the close encounter or scale, right? So you got first, second, third, fourth, fifth now. And so first kind means you just see something, right? And and that was all from J. Allen Hynek, I think, made that scale, and it's evolved since he made it back in the 60s, or yeah, 60s. So anyway, this was around 2005, and at the time I had little kids, and I had picked them up and brought them home after like kindergarten, grade school kind of age. And we had a nice swing set. And so I said, well, they all wanted to swing. So I put them on the swing set and we were swinging until mom got home. And I lived, at the time, I lived in this fairly rural area. And my son, who was, he probably was either kindergarten or preschool age, was very interested in airplanes. And we, I live in St. Louis area. We lived over in the east side out in the country on the Illinois side. And so every once in a while, we would be in the path for planes, quite often actually. And so, 747s and whatnot would go over. It was kind of cool. They really weren't that low at that point, but you could see them. And it's not too far from Scott Air Force Base, which is over in Illinois. And so then you'd see military planes. And so we're swinging, and I'm kind of just every once in a while looking up because I have to push these two kids now. And, some planes went over. I said, hey, look at there, buddy. There's a plane. And then the next thing I know, out of the corner of my eye, something catches it. And I look over, and it's a giant sphere. It's a ball. It looks like a silver, sphere in the sky, probably flying. It's hard to tell from the ground, as you know. Probably flying about 30,000 feet or 25,000 feet or something like that. And I would gather that the ball was probably about 4 times the size of a 747 regular passenger jet.
That's actually really
Um,
big.
what's that? Yeah. But in the sky, so I'm looking up at it, and you think of the jet going over, you think of the nose cone, right?
Hmm.
And it would be at least 4 or more times the size of that nose cone, right? And it was going from kind of southeast, and it was heading northwest in a straight line. Um, didn't deviate or anything. It just kind of flew over. So I caught it, and I'm just like dumbfounded because at first I'm like, well, what is that? And I was going to say, oh, there's another plane, and it wasn't a plane. I'm like, this is not a plane. This is about like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Nice day. It was in May 2005. Clear skies. I mean, there were some clouds, and you could see the ball going, behind the cloud, coming out of the cloud, and then it went over us, and so I saw the front and I saw the back, and they were both the same because it was a ball. And everything happened. Went from my when I caught it out of the corner of my eye until I couldn't see it anymore. It was maybe 20 seconds, maybe. And it was just the most weird experience that has happened because, you don't, that's not normal, right? So your mind sits there and is like, what is this? And uh, I've told people and everybody, oh, you just saw a plane. Oh, you just saw a reflection. Oh, you just saw, this or that or whatever. And, but I mean, it was daylight. It wasn't nighttime. The ability you saw a satellite. I'm like, you can't see a satellite around satellite in the atmosphere. That's not how it works.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it was a weird experience. They're like, why didn't you take a picture? I'm like, it was about 20 seconds, and this was 2005, so I could have, popped out my Nokia candy bar phone and took a really, super crappy picture.
Yeah.
Which we wouldn't even, you couldn't even tell it was the sky, I'm sure, with that, if you can remember that back in those days when it was like a little postage stamp kind of picture. But I didn't have anything with me or anything. And so it was just like, it just happened. And then it's just kind of odd because, you know, the kids didn't see it and I didn't say anything to them. I was just kind of dumbfounded for a while. In fact, I think I stopped pushing them and they got mad at me because I watched this thing kind of go over. No sound, obviously it was high enough anyway. The planes don't make too much sounds at that altitude anyhow. And it went, by. And so then I remember I told my wife, and she's like, "Are you sure? Are you sure?" Everybody's doubting you, which is very annoying.
Hmm.
If you've ever had experience like that, it's incredibly annoying how much doubt everyone casts upon you. Um, and I could see had it been, the middle of the night or something that you would have some more doubts, but this is just broad daylight. And so I even doubted myself a little bit after all of these people were like saying. So uh, I got online and I thought, well, surely there's got to maybe somebody else saw it and I could find something. And so I did a bunch of searching, and I did find a thing at the time was called UFOmaps.com, and you could go on the day and the region, and it would tell you if anybody reported anything to MUFON or anybody, whatever databases they were pulling from at the time. And sure enough, not too far from where I was at, probably about, I don't know, 20 miles or whatever, somebody reported seeing a sphere fly over on the day about the time in that town. So now I had confirmation that it happened. But it certainly was it's one of those. So now you fast forward to today, right? And you've got all this talk about aliens and Congress and now Mexico and all this kind of stuff. And there's a different perspective to it, right? So what happened today, I think people would be a little more interested in what I what I saw, but having it happen back then, there was still a lot of skepticism, and certainly the government had not come out and said anything about it. The other odd thing to me was I'm very interested in the subject and always have been since I was a kid. Never seen anything before, never seen anything since, but always read about things and watched the different documentaries and whatnot. And what struck me was, at least in 2005, I had not encountered many stories about a round ball-like UFO, which I thought was interesting. Nowadays, there seems to be a lot of them, but back then that seemed to be an anomaly that I'd never heard of. At least not, there wasn't any kind of famous, repeatable. Everything is like cigars or saucers or triangles or whatever. And so, yeah, it was interesting to me too that it was a sphere. And then now, since then, coming forward, there seems to be more reports of spherical UFOs, and a lot of them seem to be smaller. This thing was, like I said, rather large. So I don't know what to make of it. Like I said, I don't know. It was all from a distance. I didn't get any messages in my head or anything like that.
Mhm.
And it all happened within a few seconds, but it certainly has made a lasting impression on me because of it happening. Now, I had people tell me that I manifested it, because if you really want to have something happen, you'll make it happen, essentially. So like imagination or misidentification and so forth. And I'm like, well, if that was the case, wouldn't I have done it sooner? And wouldn't I have done it more often? Because I've never seen anything else like it. And I don't necessarily look at the sky on a daily basis or anything. I'm not really like looking. Like I said, it was all just by chance because I was trying to entertain my children. And so, nothing else has come of it. The other, I have one just triggered in my head here but it's not a UFO. I could talk about another thing that happened recently,
Yeah, we
which
can
is
do that here in a second, but
sure.
I had a question about the
Oh
UFO.
yeah, go ahead.
Um, about how fast would you think it was going? Like if you could guesstimate, like if you
Oh my
seen jets or
gosh.
whatever, was it going faster than what the jets would be going?
Oh yeah. So it pretty much went from my visible horizon from from southeast to northwest within 20 seconds. So it wasn't moving like a bullet, but it was moving pretty fast. And I tracked it. Basically, I caught it out of the corner of my eye, pretty far to the south east. And so I tracked it all the way across the sky until it disappeared on the horizon to the northwest. So I don't know how far I don't know how far I could see, but let's just say I could see for 5 miles. So it covered those 5 miles within 20 seconds easily.
I
So
know that is around the same time frame that the one of those videos that they have released, like the Navy had filmed or whatever.
if you're
And I don't remember. I know this talk about it called the Tic Tac, and they had another
right.
one. It seems small, but it seemed round. And I think
Yeah, there
that was
was
in,
the I think the Tic Tac ones were I think in 2004 or 2014. I can't remember now, but I think the one you're thinking of is the one that went in the water.
yeah,
So they
that
had
one.
a round one that was what do they call it? I'm blanking on the term now, but anyway, it went from the air to the water and then just disappeared. And it didn't sink. It it was still seemed to still be traveling. Didn't splash or anything.
Yeah.
It just went right into the water. And there was actually some video that I seen in Puerto Rico where a sphere we flew over Puerto Rico and went in and out of the water a couple times. Like it went down in the water, came out of the water, went down the water, came out of the water. And that was around. Now, this wasn't illuminated. That's the other thing. It looked like it was metal. I mean, it looked like, it's silver, gray, and it didn't have any lights or anything. It just, was like if you were to, throw something up in the air. I mean, it was just out in the air going, not spinning, not, didn't have a bunch of lights or any kind of pulsing or anything. Nothing. Just if it were possible to launch a ball that large, that distance, where I couldn't see where it started and where it landed, that's what it looked like.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's necessarily possible. But it wasn't an airship, because oddly enough, we've had at the time we were living there, we had the Goodyear blimp go over the house. Because they would fly out into the country to launch it and so forth, and then it would fly into downtown St. Louis for the baseball games and stuff. And I have a picture of my daughter and the Goodyear blimp in the background. Probably it was before my son was born, so a couple of years prior to that. She got a picture with the Goodyear blimp off of our deck, and it wasn't the Goodyear blimp. Because obviously it says Goodyear really large. Plus, it's not a ball; it's cylindrical.
Yeah.
The Zeppelin.
What was your other topic you wanted to talk about?
it just spurred in my head as I was talking about this. So probably, and this one was not as didn't stick with me as much, but it still was pretty interesting in light of us talking about things in the sky. So I don't know if anybody or if you or other folks are interested in watching the air traffic, because this seems to be a thing for me now all of a sudden. But there's an app called Flight Radar 24. And so Flight Radar 24 will tell you commercial aircraft flying over you, right? You can look anywhere and see commercial aircraft all over the world on this thing. And so, because again, we've moved since then, but we're still in the approach and so forth for the airport. And it's still out in the country. And so I would just look, because sometimes you'd hear, you hear planes that seem kind of low, or you hear helicopters, or you hear whatever. And so I have an iPad next to where I sit in the evening, watching television, and I pick it up and I open up Flight Radar and I'd see what was flying over us, just out of curiosity, right? So, and a lot of times it's Southwest Airlines or United or whatever, and they're just flying around. Or it's a lot of times for helicopters, it's the Lifeline and so forth. Yeah. Now, because we're near the Air Force Base, planes fly over that don't show up on Flight Radar 24 because they're military planes. And I always find that fascinating, because some of those do show up and some of them don't show up. And so it's just kind of interesting to see, what's happening, because you can hear it, it's going over, but when you look, it says there's nothing there. So over time, I've kind of done this, and my son now has grown up, and so he's like, hey, Dad, what's flying over us? And I'll look and I go, oh, that's, whatever, and so forth. So one night we're watching TV, and he hears something, and it sounds very close. And so I look, and there's nothing, right? It sounds like there's a plane, but it's very small, like a very small plane close by overhead. And there's nothing on the flight radar. I said, oh, there's nothing on the flight radar. I wonder what it is. And so I look out window. We actually have a big sliding glass door. I look out the sliding glass door, and I see two orange lights coming over the woods. And then I'm like, well, that's weird. Two orange lights. That's not planes don't have two orange lights. They have red and green navigation lights, and usually sometimes when they come over us, they already have they have headlights on, so it's regular white light. And so I wish I would have got a picture of it. And I tried because I had my iPad and I was trying to get it turned on. And I hopped up and I go and I open up, and I swear it must not have been more than 100 to 200 feet above the house. A fixed wing, very small, probably 10 to 12 feet across the wingspan, flew over the house with two orange lights on the tips of the wings. Because I could see the silhouette of it as it flew over. It was really close. This is like not supposed to happen. So I'm assuming, because it was obviously an airplane because it made the noise of an airplane. It looked like an airplane, but typically they don't fly that low or are that small. And so I believe that it was a drone, a fixed wing drone that the police use to catch people on the highway, which is weird as well.
Yeah.
But it did not have any normal flight navigation lights, and was not flying at an altitude that would be normal for a plane. So, but it wasn't a four rotor kind of drone. It was a fixed wing drone. And so the funny thing is that, again, Scott Air Force Base is not too far away, and there's billboards for the drones that they fly. There's billboards for the Boeing drones that they fly for military. Boeing, and they have the picture of the drone, or I can't remember the number of it or whatever. They make the drones and everything. So I'm assuming it was that, because those are all fixed wing, and they're not huge, but they're not small, like a hobby thing or whatever. So anyway, that was another thing. I was hoping to get a picture, but I was trying to read up on it, and I could not find anything on too much on fixed wing drones and orange lights. So weird. But anyway.
Yeah. When it comes to lights and stuff in the sky anymore, it's strange because with the drones and even satellite dish, or not satellite dish, but satellites and stuff. Just 2 years ago, and I didn't know what Starlink was, but my wife and I were out back, and I started seeing these random lights moving in a sequence. I was like, I got my phone out. I started recording. I was like, I got to record this. There's some crazy crap going on. And then I started looking online. I was like, oh, never mind. That's just Elon's Starlink.
That's right. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, typically the deal is if it pretty much moves in a straight line and it's just like a light in the sky, it's probably a satellite. And if you live far enough away from stuff and you can be out there without any light pollution, you can see all kinds of satellites going over it. It's really kind of cool to watch those as well. And there's an app, I don't have it, I can't remember the name of it, but there's a satellite tracker app that you can point your phone at it and it'll tell you if it's what satellite it is. If it's, one that is in the database, because there's several that aren't in the database because of various reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, but it's really it's interesting. And there are now obviously fixed wing drones and, kind of quad rotor drones that are big enough now that can stay up for, half an hour. They have enough battery power. The fixed wing drones can stay up even longer because they kind of like glide, but the rotor drones can stay up for quite some time as well now. And so it kind of changes the landscape for all this kind of, lights in the sky stuff, because it used to be if it lasted more than about 10 minutes, then it couldn't be that. But that's not the case anymore. And then there's even tethered drones that they fly up to do various scanning and so forth that can be up indefinitely because they're tethered. They're literally just a long cable that goes down to the ground and just fly it up over some area. And I think they utilize those for, the police do for surveillance and highway patrol and stuff now. So then that way they could just have it up there and see people, a couple miles down the road speeding, and then catch them when they get, up to the overpass where they're hiding behind or whatever. So um, they used to utilize Cessnas quite a bit, but I think they've all gone to this because it's just cheaper overall, to fly, because anybody can fly it once they get a little bit of training as opposed to a pilot. And, it doesn't cost as much to run as a airplane does. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Again, like I said, I've seen stuff in the sky here and there, and I always think if I see a UFO, it's not going to have a flashing light. I can't see if it's some high-tech space alien craft flying through the air. I can't see them having flashing lights. So I think anything with a flashing light's clearly
I,
man-made.
yeah, I would
I
think
can't.
so.
That's just my opinion. I don't know. I've seen videos, people posting of stuff. Oh, here's a UFO. I mean, yeah, it's unidentified, but clearly it's something from here because I just noticed flashing lights on. Why would they have the red and green flashing lights if they're
Right.
from?
Yeah. It
Is that
would, yeah.
that's the universal language? Apparently, they even knew that billions of light years away.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, hey, we got to put those red and green lenses on when we get to the Earth.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. No, they can't. And the interesting thing is, and this is, I suppose, I don't know if have any interest in aviation or a pilot or anything, but I just learned this from looking at this flight radar thing. Is that the the planes really do fly. They don't just fly like, okay, if I'm going to go like here to there, they don't just go do a straight line. So they fly near other airports. So there's all these routes. So even though they may be coming from New York and going to Los Angeles, let's say, it's not a straight line from New York to Los Angeles. They go by airports along the way. So they deviate uh, their line. They go near an airport and then they go to the next nearer airport. And so they're constantly changing all the way across the country, so that they kind of fly in these traffic lanes in the sky. And so that's another thing that you kind of will notice is that it's not random. And an interesting happened last year. My wife and I went to Hawaii, and when we were flying back from Hawaii, I had this knowledge at this point. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. They kind of fly so that they can make an emergency landing, so that a lot of reasons for it, safety reasons, as well as just keeping their bearings if all the equipment goes out and so forth. But the other weird thing was we were flying back from Hawaii, and I'm looking out the window because we were flying over the ocean for hours. And I looked down, and there's something in the ocean. And I took my phone out and I zoomed in on it. It was a cruise ship. And I'm like, what are the chances that I would be able to spot a cruise ship from a airplane who's, 20,000, 25,000 feet in the air? And so I think they go on the same routes too. So they follow these same routes the planes fly in order to, again, if there's problems or something, then the planes are flying over the cruise liners. So it was obviously heading to Hawaii, but it was weird because, it's just this little speck of something on the water from way up there. And I took my camera and zoomed in digitally as far as I could and took a picture of it. And so it was really kind of fascinating. So it's not, being a layperson and not involved in that world, but just kind of looking at that world from the outside. This was kind of an interesting thing to me. I'm like, oh, well, that makes more sense. And then if people see things like that, like even if it's a white light, it could just be the front of an airplane coming at you, right? And maybe you don't see the red and green lights because it's so far away. All you see is the headlight, and they're in a flight path basically that you just happen to catch that angle where you're seeing that. So I'm not totally skeptical of people, but right nowadays, it's with all this technology, it's really easy to eliminate so many things that you couldn't eliminate before. Um, you can just look on the flight rate. Oh yeah, that's going to Las Vegas or whatever, and so you don't have to guess or even I've got a thing for the planets and things, and so you just point your phone at the sky and it tells you what planet you're looking at. And so Venus will look like it's changing colors at certain times of the year, and so it looks like a UFO because it's flashing, it's making it's changing colors, especially if you have some kind of magnification. So you're easily tricked by a lot of these things. So, but see if people see something, I'm sure they saw it, but you always have to think about all these other things that may have happened.
Yeah. Again, anything with space and stuff like that, it always piques my interest because it's something I've always been interested in, obviously. But when I hear new stories or I hear topics, and when it comes to this disclosure and everything else, I don't ever feel like it's really going to be 100% disclosure just
No.
because.
Well, they're coming out now. It's not like this information is new information. They're like, okay, we're lying to you. We're lying to you. Okay, we're going to tell you the truth now.
Yeah.
It's Santa Claus, right? So, the parents, they lie and lie and lie, and then, oh yeah, by the way, it's not like you totally come clean right away with the kids. It's always a process, and so this is all part of that process. An
Yeah.
interesting thing, if you are curious, and this is a fun little thing. So I on this Flight Radar 24. So there's uh, uh, Area 51, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there's out of McCarran Airport in Las Vegas. There's a airline called Janet, the Janet flights. And everyone, if you read anything or whatever, the Janet flights take people to Area 51. And if you go on Flight Radar, they are listed. The Janet flights are listed, and you can watch them take off from McCarran Airport in Las Vegas. And then they start flying out into the desert, and then they disappear. You can watch it. It's fascinating. So you pick up a Janet. If you catch a Janet airplane taking off, usually, they're in the morning, just like a morning commute or something, and you can click on it and you can follow its flight path. And it's all kind of, as real time as they're going to give people. So, which means it's not really real time, but it's close. And you can watch that Janet flight leave Las Vegas and go out. And then in Area 51, it's even labeled on the map, but they don't show them going to Area 51. They just show them going out into the desert, and then all of a sudden that plane no longer exists.
Yeah.
It's just kind of fun because, it's one of those things that people don't, the government doesn't want to talk about, and yet here you can watch that happen. They're not landing. It's just like they're going. And on the app, it tells you, for whatever the approximation, how fast they're going, how high they're flying, and all that kind of stuff. And so they're flying at, 400 miles an hour at 20,000 feet, and then that plane just disappears. So it's just kind of fun.
Yeah.
Something to look at least.
I've
But
been out to Vegas once and I wanted to kind of drive up towards Area 51, but that's so locked off that you would never
yeah,
be able to see anything.
it's very far away. Yeah. Yeah, it takes you a while to get there too. And then, once you get as close as you can get, then you still can't see anything. So, yeah, it's weird.
Now, in your email, you'd mentioned you had a couple paranormal
Yeah.
stories as well. If you want to
So,
jump into that.
yeah. So one of them was in June of 2019. So, and again, I'm interested in all this stuff, but I never prior to this had any experience that I would say was a paranormal experience. Well, I should take it back. I had one experience when I was a kid, which I'll tell about, which was a weird experience. But this experience was actually even more so than that one in June of 2019. So my house burnt down, and and so we were kind of homeless for a while and lived in a hotel for about a month. So in May of 2019, we had a house fire. Our house had to be rebuilt, and so you got to go live someplace else. So we lived in a hotel for a while, and but the great thing about insurance companies is, yes, we did get a lot of things covered, but it's not infinite. And so then after living in the hotel for a few weeks, you kind of do a little simple math and you figure out that this is costing too much. And so we ended up renting a house in order to stretch that money, because we basically had to be away for almost a year. And so we got a rental house. It was like a late 90s suburban cul-de-sac, style house. Not like an old haunted house or anything like that. It was very, modern and what everybody has, and nothing special about it. 2-car garage and 3 bedrooms and whatnot, and nothing weird about it. And so we literally had almost nothing. We had accumulated some clothes and kind of a few essentials while we lived in the hotel for a few weeks. And we moved into this rental with nothing, right? No furniture, nothing. My wife had arranged for Amazon to deliver on the day we moved in beds, mattresses, and a pedestal to put the mattress on, so everybody had a bed, right? And we had no chairs or anything, and so we were basically laying on carpet until the Amazon guy showed up, and then I had to put together a bunch of beds. And so this happens. I get everything together. We're pretty well exhausted. It's been very trying to go through all of this. And probably on the second or third night of us being there, in the middle of the night, I wake up. It's probably like, I don't know. I assumed it was about 3:00 in the morning. I didn't look at a clock. We didn't have a clock. I didn't look at my phone or anything to see what time it was, but it was somewhere in the middle of the night. And we had just moved in, and so the neighbors had introduced themselves to us. They knew our situation, and were very nice and everything. But the one neighbor was kind of like a used car salesman type of guy, and not that there's anything wrong with a used car salesman, in case anybody writes in or something. But he was just kind of a weird guy, and overly friendly. So then this night I wake up and there's a shadow that looks to be in the window. We had blinds, no curtains or anything, just blinds on the windows because it was whatever the house came with. And there was this obvious silhouette of a guy standing, I was assuming, outside the window. And I woke up and I thought, oh, that weird guy is outside. Outside our window. And when I was so tired, because you're just exhausted, you're emotionally exhausted and then physically exhausted from doing all this stuff. And I kind of stared at it for a while and it didn't really move or anything. And I went back to sleep. Well, the next morning, we get up, we still got to work and everything. So, get up and getting ready for everything. And my son comes over to me and he says, I got to tell you something. I said, okay, what's going on? He goes, last night, a shadow came through my door and tried to grab my leg. And I'm like, what? I'm like, that at this time, he's a teenager and he stays up playing video games and whatnot. And he's had a real tough time of it too, because basically he lost all of his possessions and we got him a PlayStation for the hotel to keep him occupied. And So he's like, yeah, this thing came in and tried to grab my leg. And I'm like, are you sure? He's like, yeah. I go, oh, I think you're. Now, I had this thing just the night before where I saw this shadow, and but I didn't want to freak him out because now we have to live in this house for months where there's nowhere else to go. I mean, we don't have a house to go to, right? And we're out, and we're stuck here until our house gets finished. And so I played it off, and I'm like, oh, I'm sure you're retired, um, but tell me if anything else happens, you know, we'll just keep an eye on it, as it were, because he's already freaked out about everything. And I didn't even tell my wife about it because I didn't want her to get freaked out because everybody's already upset, right? So try to downplay it as much as possible because we have to get through this. So he keeps in touch with me, and he's like, a couple nights later, he's like, yeah, I saw it again. I'm like, well, where did you see it? He goes, it was walking through the kitchen, and then it went into the like there's a little laundry room that led out to the garage. So I went in the laundry room, and then I didn't see it. I'm like, okay. I'm like, no, that's weird, but I'm sure it's nothing. Um, you know, Downplay again, trying to keep everybody together here. And then my wife is like, I heard something in the basement. Now, there's literally nothing in this basement. It's not even a finished basement. It's just a concrete block, it's just nothing down there. The only thing that's down there, I think, is the boxes that we put down there of all the junk that we've been purchasing now to keep track of so we can move it later. And so over the next few weeks or whatever, we had pets that all passed away, and then they want to get a pet, so we got a dog, and then we would play with the dog. The play ball would take it downstairs, and you could throw this ball around, tennis ball around like crazy because it's just a big concrete space. Well, there was a corner the dog wouldn't go into, and so if you threw the ball over in the corner, the dog wouldn't go get the ball, go anywhere else to chase this ball, would not go into that corner to get that ball, which was weird. And then we had heard in the basement, especially in that corner, just weird noises, not like voices or anything, but just like something is down there making noise, like scratching or bumping or whatever. And there's nothing there. So we had that go on probably for the first, I don't know, 2.5, 3 months that we lived in this house. And then it all kind of stopped. And then I waited and waited, and I didn't tell anybody about my experience and confirming that. I feel bad for my kid, but I was really worried about us making it through everything, considering everything that happened. And I finally, once we moved out, I told him, yeah, hey, I saw that thing too. He was really mad at me, but he's since gotten over it. But yeah, it was a weird thing. So you read about shadow people, you see things about shadow people. Well, we had a shadow person living in the cul-de-sac of all places, and it was really freaky. It never hurt anybody. The only time it did something more aggressive was what my son had mentioned, and but otherwise it just kind of was there.
That's
And
interesting.
it was weird.
I've
And again, I've never seen a ghost or anything like that. I've been interested again in these things, and certainly, read and watch stuff on them. Because there's so many shows nowadays on these things. I find that entertaining, but yeah, that was a real weird one. So yeah. And I don't know if you've ever seen, I mean, it was like a person, but it was just a shadow. And I never saw it move myself, but my son did, and I believe him.
I I think once I've seen something and I can't explain it as far as a shadow type figure. I remember I was young. It's probably like 13, 14, and I lived next door to my grandparents, and my uncle lived there, and he's only about 8 years older than I am, so he's more like an older brother than uncle and nephew type situation. And I remember I went over there one night, and I thought it was him trying to scare me because I seen a black shape out by the tree line, like someone was walking between the trees. So I ran to their house, and he was in there, and my
And
grandparents were in there, so I have no idea what it would have been, but there was just like a shadow silhouette type
yeah,
walking. So that always kind of
and
creeped me out.
it is weird. And I mean, the weird thing is the weird funny thing. Maybe I don't know. I still love to watch that kind of stuff, and you can catch these shows, and they people like a Paranormal Caught on Camera is a show that always tries to show these things, and it's interesting because I'll watch it with my son sometimes, and if they're like, oh, the shadow figure came out, and we both watch, we're like, that's not a shadow figure, that's a person, because there was such a certain quality to the way this thing looked. So it wasn't solid, right? But it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
transparent. It was more opaque, and the way that it moved was different than just to him. And he tells me more of this. I didn't see it move, but the way it moves, he said, is way different than whatever people move. It's not as fluid. It's more jerky. And so yeah, we see these shows, and it's like, oh, that's somebody faking it, you know.
Yeah.
And but we have seen one that we both saw. And we're like, yeah, that's what it looked like, you know. That was the consistency of what we saw. Um, because it's again kind of like with the UFO. It's so foreign when you look at it that your brain does not know what to do. You always try to make sense of the world, right? So every time you look at anything, I don't know if you've ever optical illusions, or if you've ever just been seen something, you're like, what is that? And for a minute, and then it finally pops into place what it is, and everything seems right. Well, these things never do that. They're always like, what is that? And you can't figure it out. And it's so confusing that you can't, you know, bring it into the what you see every day. And that's what these things were, both with the ball UFO and with the shadow person. It was so confusing. My wife was terribly angry with me because I went back to sleep uh, and didn't wake her up. She was so mad when I told her. She's like, "Why the hell didn't you wake me up?" And I go, "I don't know. I was so tired." And I thought, well, it's not doing anything.
Yeah.
I thought it was the neighbor being creepy, and turns out it wasn't. So yeah, weird, huh?
Yeah. Very weird. There's a lot of stories about shadow people and stuff like that that I don't even. I've had an episode on. A lot of people see something they call like the predator, and they call them shadow people. I was like, I don't know if those are shadows because they're literally like in a cloak. When I think of
Mm-hmm.
a shadow, I think of a black figure, and
Right.
I don't know if cloaked people are considered a shadow figures. To me, that's a little bit different than a cloaking.
Yeah, I would think, yeah, because the shadow thing has a weird, um, it's very odd in its presentation. It's not like a person. I mean, it looks like a person, but it's not.
Yeah.
And yeah, so if it's anything like a person, then I think maybe that's something else. I don't know.
Yeah, I have no idea what it would be. I just know that there's some strange things that people report seeing, and it makes me really question what it is. At the same time, I'm like, I would love to find out, but again, I don't want to be the one that really does find out.
Yeah, well, yeah, and having to live with that. I mean, the hardest thing was just not letting your imagination run wild, um, in uh, and basically keying yourself up. So it's almost like Well, I don't know. If you live with something that you're not used to, after a while you get kind of used to it. That's what happened. We're like, and although my son and I had this experience, my wife didn't. And then with the noises, she'd be like, "Well, that's that weird noise," and so she didn't connect it to anything other than a weird noise. And he and I were connecting it to, yeah, I think there's something moving around this house. That is weird, but it's leaving us alone now. So now the kind of the weird happenstance maybe is so we rented that house while we were waiting. Then whenever we left, they sold the house to be a single family residence again, and the people there only lived there for a year and they sold it. They didn't stick around with it, which was really odd because it wasn't a cheap house. This is probably probably a couple $100,000, maybe $230,000 house. It's
Mm-hmm.
not like you can just jump in and out of that too quick. We got it because it was a rental because the other person had to move because of military service. So, but they had owned it for quite some time. They'd lived there for like, I don't know, 10 years or something. And then were renting it for a while and then decided they didn't want to do that anymore. So we just happened to be the last people in, but it's very, very strange.
Mm-hmm. Again, paranormal stuff, I've had some instances here and there, and I've always been somewhat of a skeptic. And it's not so much that I don't believe, but I try and make sure it is actually what a paranormal rather than an easy explanation. I kind of
What are you
talked
doing?
about this on a previous episode. Like, I've been out on a ghost hunting group and everything that was paranormal, paranormal, paranormal. I was like, that's not how it works. I mean,
Right. Yeah. They get
yeah,
paranormal on the brain and everything happens. It's
yeah,
kind of like people hunting for Bigfoot. Every sound in the woods becomes a Bigfoot.
yeah,
Um, which it just can't be. I mean, that's just not going to happen.
yeah.
Not that I do think there probably is a Bigfoot. I've never ever encountered anything, but I do think that there probably is a large primate running around the woods that we just have not been able to nail down yet. Um, because I think as your average human beings, we tend to not take into account how vast everything is. And we have a problem with scale. We don't understand scale very well. And so, everybody kind of poo-poos everything. It's like, oh yeah, that can't be. But if you're not, like, the predominance, a lot of people live in the city or whatever. And so then whenever you can't think, oh, well, yeah, I'm going to look out my back door and I won't see anybody for 100 miles. They can't think like that. They think, oh, geez, there's people everywhere around me. And that's just not the case. There's actually more space than there is people. And
Yeah.
so it'd be easy for something, oh, it can't be. Everybody, we would have found it by now. No. I mean, do you know how big the world is? For Christ's sake, it's, there's way more room for them to wander around in the woods than you think. It's vast. The wilderness is just enormous. And that's just in populated states. I don't know. Are you out east, I think, right? Because of the time.
Yeah, I live in Indiana.
Oh, okay. You're not that far east. Indiana is a good example, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
nothing in Indiana down south of Indianapolis until you get down to the, to Kentucky or whatever.
Yeah, it's
There's farms and nothing. And
where
then
I'm
there's
at.
not
I'm
that much
middle of
above them.
cornfields.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's not much above Indianapolis until you get up near Chicago. I mean, it there's just vast amounts of space that, you know, it's incredible. But yeah, so the one I don't pick on Indiana. So you live in southern Indiana or northern Indiana? Or?
I live in north central Indiana.
Okay, so farther north. The southern Indiana, it's like you leave Louisville, right? And you get through the city there, and it's like nothing until you get uh up towards Indianapolis. It seems like it's just like a few towns in between. Um, I thought it was hilarious. We drove one time, and there's it used to be called Santa Claus Village. I think now it's called Holiday World.
Yep.
Uh, yeah, and I mean, there's billboards and stuff, and then when you get to that stop, it's like there's a Super 8, and that's it. At least back then. I mean, I think they've developed it more since then, but this is when it was called Santa Claus Village, I think, in Santa Claus, Indiana. And yeah, I was like, there's a Subway and a Super 8 right up the highway. I'm like, they have an amusement park around here somewhere. It just seemed like so underdeveloped in that part of the state. Um, it's funny. Yeah, you guys have the no daylight saving time.
We do now.
Oh, you do now? That's terrible. You should have kept it the other way.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like it.
I don't like it. We have
I'm
to
not a
do
big
it.
fan of it myself, but we started doing that I think in 2006.
Really?
But yeah, it's
Oh
been
my
going on for
gosh.
a long time. So at this rate, I'm already kind of used to it.
I hate daylight saving time. I wish they'd get rid of it.
I don't know what it really benefits anyone, but
It
I suppose,
doesn't. It kills people. Did you know? Did I see the statistics? People are more likely to have there's more heart attacks on the time change than at other times of the year. It's crazy. I
yeah.
don't know if you're prone to that, but watch out for the time change. It's gonna might get you.
Yeah, I'm not really big on the whole daylight savings time or the time changes, but for me, I'm the lucky one that most of my work is in central time and I live in eastern time.
Oh,
So
really?
I'm already adjusting daily because where I work, I have to drive up and then go over. And instead of, I don't like how Indiana has this set up. Like there's certain counties in the northwestern side of the state that turn to central time. They're always on central time.
Right,
And the other
Chicago.
parts, yeah, the Chicago areas, like over from Chicago area over towards like South Bend and then down to like the Rensselaer area. I don't know how familiar you are with that, but those little northwest corner is all on Chicago time, Central time, Illinois time, and then the rest of the state is on Eastern time. So I live like 3 counties away from where the time change is, and most of my work's up around that northeastern section from where I'm based out of. So
Yeah.
my main office is based in Central time, so I'm always an hour ahead of everyone. So when they want to start work at 7 in the morning, it's actually 8 o'clock my time.
That's got to be so frustrating because you have to keep track of that. And, everybody else doesn't. And so then you're like, okay, I got to get going here because I got to be there, And I
Yeah,
don't know. It'd just be a little bit of, to me, it'd be a little tedious to have to keep thinking like that. And then your phone will switch because you'll move over to the other area. And then when you get on that other cell tower, it's going to send you a different time.
yeah.
So
It,
then your phone's constantly switching back and forth.
the phone's always switching back and forth, and the timing on text messages or emails or whatever get flip flopped. And it's just like sometimes if I have meetings and it's set for this time, I was like, is it really this time or is it my time? Because I don't know if it adjusts for where I'm at. If I'm in my Eastern time, is I have a meeting at 9, is it 9 my time or is it 9 their time?
Yeah, that's just got to be a pain. I don't, yeah, I don't understand I mean, you have to, I guess, suppose the idea is that way, that we have a reference point for certain things, but I mean, I don't know. Is it really worth it?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think, yeah, I don't know. Because my guess is they didn't do all that. turn of the century, they weren't worried about any of this crap. They weren't they weren't thinking like that back then. This has all become something that's happened in the last 100 years or so.
Um, it's definitely I whoever thought up daylight savings time kind of needs to be slapped because I don't see how it helps anything, to be
No,
honest.
it
But
doesn't. Everybody, if you ask people, they're like, oh, it's for the farmers. I'm like, the farmers don't give a crap. They do whatever they need to do whenever they need to do it. They don't even look at the clock. They're like, yeah, and I got to go harvest. And then they work all night or they do whatever they have to do to get it done. They don't need to have the clock set. Um, but that's usually people who are more in an urban setting say that because that's what they've heard or something. And it's
mhm.
like, I love the flawed logic that everybody goes along. Oh yeah, because the farmers is like, you think a farmer is looking at the clock to do anything? They don't care. They don't care what time it is. It's time to do something. They go out and do it. The clock is immaterial. But yeah, people go right along with it. We're all so programmed to believe these things, and it just is amazing to me that people don't question it more. Oh, it's so the kids don't have to go to school in the dark. Well, guess what? You could just get up later. You don't have to go to school in the dark. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's all ridiculousness.
Yeah, it matters to some people, but not to
I,
everyone, I guess.
I don't know who those people are, but they are too rigid in their thoughts.
Yeah.
That's my thought there. That's my opinion. I tell you.
Did you have any other topics that you wanted to
Oh,
discuss?
I could talk about the one when I was a kid back in the early '80s.
Sure,
I had
sure.
a
Go ahead.
thing. So back around 1980, my grandfather died, and uh, you know, this one isn't quite as scary as any of the rest of them, but it's interesting. Um, he died, and so process of uh, you know, divvying up some of his stuff, I guess, right? So anyway, I ended up with after a while, I ended up with a receiver. At the time, it was a big thing to have a receiver, and then you have your turntable, and you have your cassette deck or whatever, all components, right? And so I got this receiver that even had a little thing on it that said solid state, which at one point in time, solid state meant something to people as some kind of feature. So I had this solid state receiver that I inherited, and that was my grandfather, who's kind of into that kind of stuff, and I had it in my room, and it was older at that point in time, and I used to listen to the radio and so forth. It didn't have everything else with it. I don't know what happened to the turntable and everything, but I just got the one piece, and so I had it for a while, and like I said, it wasn't new by the time I got it. It had been around for some time, and I woke up in the middle of the night because it was on. I didn't turn it on, as far as I know. Nobody turned it on, and so I woke up and I go over to it because it's just playing static, oddly enough, um, and but no voices or anything. It's not like on the edge of a station or anything. It's just it's static noise. And so I go over to it and I turn it off, but it doesn't turn off. I hit the switch to turn it off, but it keeps playing the static. And I hit the switch on and I hit switch off, hit the switch on, hit switch off. Keeps playing static. And I did that, waited there for a little while, and then I hit it again, and then it goes off. And I go back to bed. Apparently, I have a really bad time about waking up in the middle of the night, and I just go back to sleep. And but anyway, After that, it stopped working, but it was really weird um, that it did that. Now, I guess at that time, I don't know if these things electronics would go out like that, but it seems to me that the power switch would still work. So yeah, so I always thought that was like, some type of I thought, was my grandpa trying to talk to me? But I never heard any voices or anything. But I've never had the electronics generally just fail. They don't die a weird slow death like that. And so that was a weird happenstance. And then it was just a boat anchor after that. But I kept it around for a long time just because it was my grandfather's, and I thought there was some weird connection there. But um,
I know they say energy attaches itself to certain things, so you never know.
you never know, yeah. And so yeah, I was like, oh, maybe it was, but nothing, audible other than the noise. But yeah, I don't think I've had anything else do that. Things stop working, but typically speaking, they don't work after you turn them off.
No, unless there's some faulty wiring or something wrong with the switch. I mean, there could be a logical explanation,
Yeah,
but
it
at the
could
same
be.
time, you never know.
Yeah, and I was a kid, so it was. I was like, well, but at the time, I didn't think much of it because I was trying to get some sleep. But yeah, I mean, there's my wife will tell you that I'm a horrible person to wake up in the middle of the night for anything happening. I kind of am on autopilot, and I really just want to get back to sleep. So I have to be totally awakened in order to be useful. There's been several times where I've got waken up for various, small issues, and then she's like, just go back to bed. You're useless.
I can get up and I function. I just don't want to. Like if I hear, I'm a very light sleeper, so I hear things and I just kind of lay there. And then sometimes there is a really interesting noise, we'll just call it that much. And then I will have to get up and go investigate just because it's strange. And I never end up finding anything, or I noticed a dog knock something over. Nothing paranormal, I don't think, but I don't know
Yeah.
if it's I don't know if it's me being a chicken or what, but like if I hear strange things, I'm just like, I don't care.
Yeah, yeah, I sleep heavy, and so yeah, if I get woken up, it's like, oh my gosh, why are you talking to me? And so yeah, all of my weird things I've been, very a very non-compliant person when I wake up like that.
Yeah. Well, Bob, it's getting about that time where I try and wrap these up. So if there wasn't much else that you wanted to discuss, we can
No,
probably I'd like for
no.
you to plug your
Oh,
show where
sure.
they can find you at, wherever anyone wants to check you out.
Yeah, whatever I mean, if you do, you do. If you don't, you don't. It's fine. So, but we do a weekly show called Static Radio at staticradio.com, and you can find it on iTunes and Spotify and iHeart and all over the place. We tell stories. A lot of them, we try to tell funny stories. So let me think. This week I get recognized buying too much popcorn while Miles. I'm trying to remember what Miles did this week. That's my bad thing. I can't remember what he did, but um, and we make fun of each other in our stories and try to trip each other up and kind of are rude to each other. So if you want to hear a couple people trying to either crack each other up or make each other angry, then you could listen.
Awesome. Well, Bob, I appreciate you coming on here tonight and talking with me. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, not a problem. And anyone listening, if you would like to be on an episode of Tinfoil Tales, send me an email. It's tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com. But again, thanks, Bob. Thanks for listening. And we're going to roll on out. So good night.
Have a good one.
remember, the truth lies in the stories we share, the connections we make. Stay curious, stay open-minded. Thank you all for joining us on this journey, and until next time, keep questioning, keep seeking, and keep exploring the unknown. Good night, everyone.